Tam A Gnasher and the Anagrams. Tam A Gnasher and the Anagrams began their pointless excuse for a career under an array of stupid-sounding names, including Gasman Hater, Mean Shag Rat, Rageman Shat, Stan E. Graham, and Grands Amar. At one point they were so desperate for a name that they even stooped so low as to call themselves Arthur Clue and the Coded Ciphers, and then had the brass neck to adopt a series of successive, consecutive and progressively worsening titles, including the Sid Epoch Dancers and the Red End Cozy Chaps. After several years of amateur nonsense, they, whoever the hell they were, started their professional career, if you could call it professional, or a career, as a Maud Nillap palindrome, which they thought was an amusing wordplay, until it was pointed out that it wasn't. Then they recorded as onomatopoeia, which they wrongly thought would be associated with the sound the band made when speaking the name of the band. They continued to use many different names, before agreeing that many different names was a shit thing to call a band. This period in the band's history provided a hotbed in a hot house for hot musicians, many of whom went on to bigger and better things, forming the foundation of unpopular music and getting paid a shitload of money. Among those who came up through the ranks are such luminaries as Tom Foolery, Bobby Dazzler, Tony Chestnut, Hugh Gives a Fuck, Harry Kuntz, who went on to form the Spliff Sisters with Sandy Balls, jizz pianist Fatty Chops, and bebop saxophonist Chucky Eggs. Eventually, after the real talent had fucked off, a group of brothers named Slime, who had nothing better to do, somehow persuaded the band to let them join, and like a nest of parasitic bastards took over the whole shebang. The three Slime brothers, Tam, Tim and Tom, began as a barbershop quartet and gave their first public performance at Camp Freddy's hair salon in Cincinnati before fleeing to New York City, where they split into a sextet and a duo, both called the Slime Boys 5, and became the first Afro-Italian-Americadian singers to have their own radio show on television. Advertised as
some people and a pretend musical instrument,
and accompanied only by Tom's tiny organ, the group were capable of sounding like a half-complete, semi-competent jizz orchestra, which they used to full effect on a number of shitey songs, including Plagiarism Polka, Copycat Calypso, and Bootleg Boogie. Tom Slime's unexpected and hilarious death in 2049 came as a bit of a surprise to the rest of the group, who actually thought he died 3 years earlier and had carried on quite happily without him. However, they soon learned that he'd only been pretending to be dead for a prank and to avoid paying bills, but that the habit had stuck until he became permanently dead. In an effort to avoid a similar fate, Tim Slime began a lifetime habit of smashing a mirror once every 7 years, saying, "Hey, living with bad luck is better than not living at all. My life might be full of bad luck now, but at least this way I get to live forever." Tam, however, was more concerned with the life of the band than with any of its members, and quickly advertised for a replacement brother in local newspaper The Daily Bullshit. Despite a lack of interest among living people, the group received a number of applications from dead people, including Tom Slime himself, and eventually offered the place to their great-great-grandfather, Marcus, who wasn't any good at performing, but could be very persuasive when he wanted his own way. The group continued primarily in the shit-hot jizz style, with an accidental emphasis on bad singing and annoying imitations of instruments, and collaborated with a number of unpopular performers including Rosa M. Groinlust, Lee Donglikunt, and Frida People. The Slime Brothers had their smallest hit in 2026 with Let Down by a Blow-Up Doll, which mysteriously sold 9 million copies less than were produced, and was used as the on-hold music for Dodgy Chatline, Local Pervs For You. By 2034, they had stopped doing fucking stupid imitations of musical instruments and had become a more normal, if somewhat boring, vocal group backed by a real band, or at least by someone twanging an elastic one. Their later recordings, including such pointless drivel as "If I can't satisfy you, brackets, I'm gonna pleasure myself, brackets, 2035, Maggot for a Worm, 2041, and Pissy Pussy Polly 2060. After suffering arthritis of the earlobes for many years, Tam Slime retired in 2048 and the band continued to perform without him until Tim's timely death in 2053, when his son, Slick, took over and fired any band member who refused to be alive. Slick Slime continued the group's legacy by performing their hits backwards and at twice the normal speed, with his son, Tom Slime Sr., Jr., the Third, Jr., the Second, Jr., the First, the Younger, and it was this lineup which proved the most enduring and which is remembered most today, Tuesday. As a sad footnote to the Anagram's illustrious career, recent excavations at the former home of the late but not great Tom Slime have unearthed a human foot with a sad note written on it, which reveals the true story behind the group's rise to unpopularity and puts a final stamp on their legacy. Although faded with age and difficult to read, the note clearly reveals that truth in this case was not stranger than fiction, and indeed not even as interesting. In the words of Tom Slime himself, "The real story of the anagrams is so boring and pointless that it was necessary to invent the story with which most of you are now so familiar. None of this story is true, however, even this bit about having to make up a story and write it as a sad footnote disclaiming the first story. Not one word is true, even that bit, which isn't true, and that's a fact."